The slap echoed across the observation deck before anyone could stop it. Lieutenant Commander Morgan Hayes stood perfectly still as General Koenig's hand connected with her cheek, the crack of skin on skin silencing 40 special operations officers in an instant. She didn't flinch, didn't raise her voice, just turned her head back slowly, locked eyes with the Marine general who'd called her confirmed kill count statistically impossible fiction, and said 5 words that would end his career. "I can demonstrate it tomorrow." 3 days later, in 68.4 seconds of surgical precision, she would prove that some numbers don't lie. They just wait for the right moment to speak. Before we show you exactly how one woman's silence became the loudest statement in naval special warfare history, drop a comment telling us what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Hit that subscribe button and stick with me until the end, because what happens in that kill house isn't just about revenge. It's about the difference between proving yourself and making doubt irrelevant. Morgan Hayes had been sitting in military briefing rooms for 14 years, but she'd never felt air this hostile. The Joint Special Operations Training Command Conference Center at Naval Amphibious Base Coronado was designed for collaboration. Circular table, ergonomic chairs, natural light filtered through reinforced windows that overlooked the Pacific. But the 40 men and women packed into this room weren't collaborating. They were watching. She stood at the presentation screen, laser pointer in hand, finishing her breakdown of close-quarters engagement protocols in denied urban environments. Her voice was calm, methodical, the kind of tone that came from explaining life-or-death concepts so many times that emotion had been stripped down to clarity. "Final point," she said, clicking to her last slide. "Civilian discrimination protocols in high-density environments require split-second threat assessment. Hesitation costs lives. Overreaction costs missions. The balance is trained, not theoretical." A Navy SEAL commander in the front row nodded slightly. 2 Army Special Forces officers exchanged approving glances. But at the far end of the table, Major General Bradley Koenig sat with his arms crossed, his jaw working like he was chewing glass. "Commander Hayes," he interrupted, his voice carrying the particular authority of someone who'd spent 30 years expecting immediate compliance. "You keep referencing operational experience. Walk us through your actual field time." Morgan clicked off the laser pointer. 14 years, sir. 7 operational theaters. Primary role, sniper and reconnaissance." "Sniper," Koenig repeated, letting the word hang. "So you've actually taken shots in combat?" "Yes, sir." "How many?" The room shifted. It wasn't an unusual question in SOF circles, but the way he asked it, like he was cross-examining a suspect, made it something else. Morgan kept her voice neutral. 73 confirmed neutralizations." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was dense with disbelief. Brigadier General Marcus Tolliver, seated beside Koenig, let out a sharp exhale that might have been a laugh. "I'm sorry, did you say 73? "Yes, sir." Koenig leaned forward, elbows on the table. "That's an extraordinarily high number for someone in an advisory capacity." "I wasn't always in an advisory capacity, General. I spent 11 years operational before transitioning to instruction." "Still," Tolliver said, his tone sharpening, 73 confirmed kills. That would put you in the top tier of American military snipers. Ever." Morgan met his gaze. "The record is verified, sir. Tier 3 classification." "Convenient," Koenig said softly. The word landed like a blade. A Marine Raider captain to Morgan's left cleared his throat uncomfortably. A Navy lieutenant shifted in her seat. But no one spoke. "I'm sorry," Morgan said, her voice still level. Koenig spread his hands in a gesture of false reasonableness. "I'm just saying it's convenient that a number like that is classified. Makes it difficult to verify. Easy to claim. Tolliver nodded. We've seen inflated after-action reports before. Someone takes credit for a team kill, rounds up their count, adds a little flair for the resume. It happens. Morgan felt the heat rising in her chest, but her face remained neutral. General, with respect, every one of those 73 is documented with ISR footage, after-action reports, and third-party confirmation. The classification exists because of operational security, not to protect exaggeration. ISR footage, Koenig repeated, which we can't see. Not without proper clearance, no, sir. How very convenient. This time a Navy captain, James Rourke, SEAL Team 7 liaison, spoke up. General Koenig, Commander Hayes' record is well established within naval special warfare. If you have questions about verification protocols, I can arrange. Captain Rourke, Koenig cut him off, his voice hardening. This isn't about inter-service loyalty. This is about operational integrity. When someone stands up in front of the nation's elite special operators and claims a kill count that rivals Chris Kyle, we have a responsibility to ask questions. Morgan's jaw tightened imperceptibly. I'm not claiming anything, sir. I'm stating verified fact. Tolliver shook his head slowly, a thin smile playing at his lips. 73 confirmed kills. That's not just remarkable, Commander. That's statistically improbable for anyone. For a woman? He let the implication hang unfinished. For a trained SEAL sniper with 14 years of operational deployment, Morgan corrected quietly. Trained, Koenig said, seizing the word. Training and execution are different things. I've seen plenty of qualified shooters who couldn't perform under real pressure. Then you haven't seen enough shooters, sir. The words came out before Morgan could stop them. Not loud, not aggressive, just factual. But in a room full of senior officers, even factual insubordination was still insubordination. Koenig's face darkened. Excuse me? Morgan took a breath. I meant no disrespect, General. I'm simply saying that performance under pressure is exactly what those 73 confirm. Every shot was taken under combat conditions. Everyone was necessary. Everyone is verified. By people we can't talk to, Tolliver said. About operations we can't review. Using footage we can't see. That's how classified operations work, sir. That's how inflated egos work, too, Koenig shot back. The Marine Raider captain stood abruptly. Sir, I think... Sit down, Captain, Koenig ordered, without looking at him. The captain sat. Koenig stood now, slowly, his full height and rank filling the space. Let me be very clear, Commander Hayes. I have spent 3 decades in the United States Marine Corps. I have commanded men in combat in 3 separate wars. I have seen the best shooters, the most elite operators, the absolute top tier of American military capability. And I have never, not once, seen a verified kill count above 60 without extensive documentation, multiple citations, and command-level review. My record has all of that, sir. Then why isn't it public? Because the operations were classified. All of them? Most of them, yes, sir. Tolliver stood as well, flanking Koenig. Commander, do you understand how this looks? You're asking us to accept, on faith, that you have one of the highest sniper counts in American military history. But we can't verify it. We can't review it. We just have to take your word for it. You have to take the Navy's word for it, Morgan corrected. The verification isn't mine. It's institutional. The institution, Koenig said, his voice dropping to something colder, has been known to inflate credentials for political purposes. Diversity quotas, optics, making sure the right people get the right press. Morgan felt the floor shift beneath her. This wasn't about her record anymore. This was about what she represented. General Koenig, she said carefully, Are you suggesting my kill count was fabricated for political reasons? I'm suggesting, he said, stepping closer, that 73 confirmed kills is a fantasy number, and I'm suggesting that you know it. The room held its breath. Morgan looked at him, really looked at him, at the ribbons on his chest that told a story of combat, command, and competency, at the stars on his collar that represented decades of earning respect, at the face of a man who had decided what she was capable of before ever checking whether he was right. General, she said quietly, I can prove it. Koenig's eyebrows rose. Can you now? Yes, sir. I'm requesting authorization to demonstrate competency under controlled evaluation. Tolliver laughed. Actually laughed. What? You want to run an obstacle course? No, sir. I want to run Scenario 7. The room went dead silent. Scenario 7 was the most demanding close-quarters battle drill in Special Operations training. 12 hostile targets, 4 civilian non-combatants, low light conditions, moving obstacles, auditory distractions, and a 90-second time limit. It had a 40% pass rate among male SEALs. Most operators considered it a career benchmark. Captain Rourke's eyes widened. Commander Hayes. Scenario 7, Koenig repeated, his surprise giving way to something that looked like anticipation. You want to run a live-fire CQB drill to prove a number? I want to demonstrate what 73 looks like when it's real, Morgan said. Koenig exchanged a glance with Tolliver. Something passed between them, an understanding, an agreement. Maybe just shared certainty that this would end the way they expected. Fine, Koenig said. Tomorrow morning, 0600, full observation protocol. We'll all watch. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me yet, Commander. Koenig's smile was cold. Because when you fail to meet standard, and you will fail, we're going to have a very different conversation about integrity and honesty in this command. Morgan held his gaze. Understood, sir. Dismissed. She gathered her materials in silence. 40 pairs of eyes tracked her movement, some sympathetic, some curious, some already convinced she'd just made a career-ending mistake. She walked to the door with her spine straight and her face neutral. Behind her, she heard Tolliver's voice, pitched just loud enough to carry. This should be entertaining. Someone laughed quietly. Morgan didn't turn around. She just kept walking, through the door, down the hallway, past the administrative offices where junior personnel pretended not to stare. She made it all the way to the women's locker room before her hands started shaking. She sat on the bench, staring at her reflection in the mirror across the room. 37 years old. 14 years of service. 3 bronze stars. 2 silver stars. A Purple Heart. A Navy Cross nomination that was still classified. 73 confirmed kills that she saw every time she closed her eyes. And none of it mattered. Because they'd decided what she was before ever asking who she was. Her phone buzzed. A text from Captain Rourke. You don't have to do this. She typed back, Yes, I do. Another buzz. They're going to use this against you, win or lose. Morgan stared at the message. He was right. If she failed Scenario 7, they'd use it as proof she'd been lying all along. If she passed, they'd find another reason to dismiss her. Lucky run, modified scenario, unconscious assistance from the range staff. She typed, Probably, but maybe the next woman won't have to prove it. She sent the message and stood. Her hands had stopped shaking. Because this wasn't about her anymore. It was about every female operator who would come after her. Every woman who would have to stand in front of men who'd already decided she wasn't good enough. The proving was exhausting, but someone had to do it. Morgan changed into her PT gear and headed for the base armory. She had 16 hours to prepare. 16 hours to turn muscle memory into mathematics. 16 hours to make sure that when she walked into that kill house, there would be no doubt, no debate, no room for interpretation. Just 73 seconds of truth. The armory was quiet at 1800 hours. Most operators had finished their training blocks and headed to chow or their barracks. Morgan signed out her personal M4A1, the rifle she'd carried through 7 theaters, the one that knew her hands as well as she knew its trigger pull. The rangemaster, a weathered SEAL senior chief named Patterson, glanced at her paperwork. Scenario 7 authorization. That's ambitious. I'm aware. He studied her face. You know the current facility record is 94 seconds, right? I know. And that was set by a DevGru operator with 15 years of door-kicking experience. Morgan met his eyes. What's the miss rate? Patterson paused. Average is 2.3 misses per run. Civilian hit rate is about 8%. Not acceptable. It's Scenario 7, ma'am. It's designed to push operators past their limits. Then I'll have to operate beyond limits. Patterson handed her the weapon card. You've got the range until 2200. After that, I'm required to log night training as separate authorization. Understood. I only need 3 hours. He raised an eyebrow, but didn't comment. Morgan took her rifle and headed to Lane 12, the furthest from the admin building, where she could work without observation. For the next 3 hours, she didn't practice shooting. She practiced thinking. She ran scenarios in her mind, hostile right, civilian left, 3 seconds to discriminate. She visualized the kill house layout, the known choke points, the angles where targets typically appeared. She didn't touch her rifle except to check the action and verify the optic 0. Because 73 confirmed kills hadn't come from superior marksmanship, they'd come from superior decision-making under pressure. The shooting was just the final step in a process that began with threat assessment, continued through tactical positioning, and ended only when there was no other option. At 2,100, she finally loaded a magazine. 20 rounds. She set up a simple drill, 5 targets at varying distances, mixed hostile and non-hostile markings. She gave herself 4 seconds per engagement. She fired 20 rounds in 18 seconds. 20 hits, 0 misses. Patterson appeared behind her, arms crossed. You're not even breathing hard. It's only paper. Tomorrow won't be. Morgan ejected the magazine, cleared the chamber, and set the rifle down. Tomorrow will be easier. How do you figure? Because tomorrow, people will be watching. Patterson studied her for a long moment. You've done this before, haven't you? Morgan didn't answer directly. Senior Chief, have you ever taken a shot when missing wasn't an option? When, if you missed, someone on your team died? 3 times, he said quietly. How many did you make? 3 for 3. Why? Because missing wasn't an option. Morgan nodded. Tomorrow, missing isn't an option, so I won't miss. Patterson's expression shifted, something like recognition, or maybe respect. They're setting you up to fail, you know. Koenig put in a request to observe from the kill house floor, not the observation deck. Morgan's jaw tightened. That's against protocol. He's a 2-star general. Protocol bends. Let him watch from wherever he wants. The targets don't care about his rank. No, Patterson agreed. But you should care that he's going to be looking for any excuse to disqualify your run. Then I won't give him one. She picked up her rifle, secured it in its case, and headed for the door. Patterson called after her. Commander, What do you need from me tomorrow? Morgan paused. Just start the clock. I'll handle the rest. By the time Morgan reached her quarters, word had spread across the base. The story had mutated through each retelling. Some versions had her challenging Koenig directly. Others claimed she'd broken down under questioning. One particularly creative rumor suggested she'd actually admitted to fabricating her record. None of them were true. But truth didn't matter in the ecosystem of military gossip. Perception did. She found a handwritten note slipped under her door. They're making you the example. Don't give them the satisfaction. M. She didn't recognize the handwriting, but she understood the message. Somewhere on this base, someone was watching. Someone who understood what this was really about. Morgan sat on her rack and pulled out her phone. She scrolled through her contacts until she found a name she hadn't called in 3 years. Sarah Chen, the first female SEAL candidate to make it through BUDS/S after her. The call went to voicemail. Morgan almost hung up, then decided against it. Sarah, it's Morgan Hayes. I know we haven't talked since you graduated. I just wanted you to know. Tomorrow morning, I'm running Scenario 7. Some generals doubt my record. They think 73 is impossible. I'm going to show them it's not. I'm doing this so you don't have to, so the next woman doesn't have to. So someday, someone's competency is just assumed instead of constantly questioned. She paused. Good luck with Team 3. You earned it. She hung up and set the phone aside. Sleep didn't come easy. When it finally did, she dreamed of Helmand Province, 2011, her first confirmed kill. A Taliban fighter with an RPG 400 meters out, her spotter calling wind, her finger on the trigger, the knowledge that if she missed, 6 Marines would die. She hadn't missed. She never had. And tomorrow, she wouldn't start. At 5:30, Morgan stood outside the kill house facility, watching the eastern sky lighten from black to deep blue. She'd arrived early, not to practice, but to center herself. The rifle case rested at her feet. Her uniform was pressed. Her mind was quiet. The first observer arrived at 05:45, then another, then 10 more. By 05:55, the observation deck was packed. 40 officers, all of whom had heard some version of yesterday's confrontation, all of whom had formed an opinion about what would happen in the next few minutes. Captain Rourke found her near the entrance. Morgan, last chance to back out. Not backing out, sir. They've stacked the deck. Koenig convinced the rangemaster to use the advanced targeting sequence, faster pop-ups, shorter discrimination windows. Morgan's eyes narrowed. That's not standard protocol. He claimed it was necessary to validate your claimed skill level. And Patterson agreed? Patterson was overruled by the base commander, who happens to be an old friend of Koenig's. Morgan felt the anger rising, but pushed it down. Doesn't matter. Fast or slow, hostile is hostile. Morgan, sir, with respect, I've made my decision. Either I demonstrate competency or I don't. The rest is just noise. Rourke studied her face, then nodded slowly. All right, I've got your back. Whatever happens. Thank you, sir. At precisely 0600, the range officer's voice crackled over the external speaker. Lieutenant Commander Hayes, you are authorized to enter and prepare. All observers to the deck. General Koenig, you are cleared to Level 1 observation only. Morgan picked up her rifle case and walked through the entrance. The kill house swallowed her into darkness. Inside the observation deck, Tolliver leaned close to Koenig. You really think she'll fold? Koenig smiled. I think we're about to expose the biggest fraud in naval special warfare history. Below them, in the dark, Morgan Hayes loaded her first magazine and whispered to no one, 73. Then she stepped up to the start line and waited for the clock to begin. The darkness inside the kill house wasn't complete. Red emergency strips ran along the baseboards, casting just enough light to navigate without revealing details. Morgan stood at the start line, her rifle held low and ready, her breathing already slowed to the rhythm she'd trained into muscle memory over 14 years. The intercom crackled. Patterson's voice, professional and neutral. "Commander Hayes, you have reviewed the scenario parameters?" "Affirmative." 12 hostile targets, 4 civilian non-combatants. Any civilian hit results in immediate disqualification. Standard passing requires 10 of 12 hostiles neutralized in under 90 seconds. Do you understand? "Yes, Senior Chief." A pause, then quieter. "They changed the timing sequence. Pop-ups are 40% faster than standard." Morgan's grip tightened fractionally on her rifle. "Acknowledged." Above her, in the observation deck, Koenig leaned against the reinforced glass, arms crossed. "Let's see this miracle worker perform." Tolliver stood beside him, a thin smile playing at his lips. "Money says she freezes at the first civilian discriminator." "I'm not taking that bet," Koenig said. "She'll probably fire wild, hit a non-combatant, then blame the equipment." Captain Rourke, standing 3 feet away, turned sharply. "General, that's what, Captain? Honest?" Koenig didn't look at him. "We're about to watch someone who lied about their combat record fail publicly. I'm just calling it like I see it." Patterson's voice cut through the observation deck speakers. "Scenario 7, live fire, commencing in 5 seconds. Morgan closed her eyes. Not to pray, not to hope. Just to let the last piece of doubt drain away. When she opened them again, there was nothing in her mind except the next target, the next decision, the next trigger pull. 3, 2, 1. Execute. The buzzer screamed through the kill house, and Morgan moved. The first room materialized as pneumatic walls slid open with industrial hisses. 2 hostile silhouettes snapped up from behind a partial barrier, one left, one right, both armed with weapon profiles. Morgan's rifle came up smooth as breathing. Double tap left, transition right, double tap right. 4 shots in 1.8 seconds. Both targets dropped. "Jesus," someone whispered in the observation deck. Morgan was already moving, flowing into the corridor that connected to room 2. The lighting shifted. Strobes, designed to distort depth perception, fired randomly. Most operators slowed down here, let their eyes adjust. Morgan didn't slow down. Room 2 opened, and her heart rate didn't spike because she'd trained it not to. One hostile holding a civilian, adult female profile, as a shield. The gap between their heads was maybe 3 inches, maybe less. She didn't hesitate. Single shot. Center mass through the gap. The hostile target folded. The civilian remained standing. In the observation deck, a Marine colonel inhaled sharply. "That's not possible. The gap was too narrow." "She got lucky," Koenig said, but his voice had lost some of its certainty. Patterson watched the digital timer. 18 seconds elapsed. His jaw tightened because he'd run Scenario 7 43 times in his career, and he'd never seen anyone move this clean. Morgan entered room 3, and time compressed. 3 hostiles, staggered positions, different elevations, one high left, one center low, one right behind a barrel obstacle. Her mind didn't process them as separate targets, just a problem set requiring a specific solution sequence. High left, 2 rounds. Barrel right, angle shot, 1 round through the gap. Center low, 2 rounds. 5 shots, 3 targets, 2.4 seconds. "She's not even breathing hard," Tolliver said, and now he wasn't smiling anymore. Koenig's hands gripped the observation rail. "It's a setup. Patterson modified the scenario." Captain Rourke turned to face him fully. "General, Senior Chief Patterson doesn't modify scenarios for anyone, especially not under your direct observation." "Then explain what we're watching." "I am explaining it, sir. That's what 73 confirmed kills looks like." Morgan cleared Room 3's exit and paused for half a second, not from fatigue, just tactical rhythm. Room 4 was the chaos room. Multiple hostiles, multiple civilians, all moving on tracks. The failure point for 60% of operators who made it this far. The door opened, and chaos became geometry. 2 hostiles moving left, 1 civilian running across the field of fire. 3 hostiles staggered right, 1 civilian standing stationary center. Megan tracked the hostile on the left, followed his movement pattern for 0.3 seconds, then fired the instant the civilian cleared her lane. Double tap. Target down. Second hostile left, partially obscured. She adjusted for the angle, fired once through the gap. Transition right. The 3 hostiles were moving in a pattern, crossing each other's lines. Most operators would wait for clear lanes. Morgan didn't wait. She threaded shots between moving civilians like she was reading sheet music. 1 round here, 2 rounds there, another single shot finding the gap that existed for half a second before closing. All 3 targets dropped. 0 civilians hit. The observation deck had gone completely silent. Patterson stared at the monitor displaying target status. Room 4 complete. Time 41 seconds. Accuracy 100%. "That's not human," a Navy lieutenant whispered. "No," Captain Rourke said quietly. "That's what happens when you train someone properly and then give them 14 years to perfect it." Koenig's face had gone pale. "There are still 2 rooms left. She can still fail." But his voice carried no conviction anymore. Morgan entered Room 5, and her heart rate was still 68 beats per minute. The same as when she'd started. The same as when she'd taken her first confirmed kill in Helmand Province. The same as when she'd taken her 73rd in Raqqa. Room 5 was the psychological break room, designed specifically to induce decision paralysis through impossible scenarios. 2 hostiles, 3 civilians, all moving. 8 seconds to clear before automatic failure. The patterns were designed to never give clean lanes. The whole point was to force operators to choose between taking a risky shot or running out of time. Morgan entered and processed the movement patterns in microseconds. Her brain, trained through 10,000 hours of scenario work, honed through actual combat where hesitation meant death, saw the solution before her conscious mind could articulate it. She moved to the left wall, changing her angle by 15 degrees. The civilian's movement pattern now created a 2-second window where both hostiles would be exposed simultaneously. She waited. 1 second. 2 seconds. The window opened. 2 shots, both center mass, both perfect. The targets dropped with 3 seconds remaining on the room clock. Patterson's hand went to his mouth. "Oh my God." In the observation deck, Koenig turned to the range safety officer. "Check the system. Check the civilian sensors. There's no way she didn't clip one." The RSO ran diagnostics. "All sensors green, sir. 0 civilian contacts." "Check again." "Sir, I've checked 3 times. She hasn't touched a single non-combatant." Tolliver had stopped watching Morgan. He was watching Koenig, watching the realization spread across the general's face like spilled ink. Morgan exited Room 5 and approached the final door. Room 6. The graduation room. The one that ended careers or built legends. Patterson's voice came through, tight with something that might have been awe. "Final room, Commander. 4 hostiles, 1 civilian. Multiple concealment positions. Standard time remaining, 22 seconds." 22 seconds. Morgan checked her magazine. 6 rounds left. More than enough. She centered herself one final time, then stepped through the door. Room 6 exploded into motion. Targets popped from positions that shouldn't have been mechanically possible. Ceiling mounts, floor panels, rotating barriers. The civilian was a child profile, making the discrimination even more critical. 4 hostiles, 1 child. 22 seconds. Morgan's rifle tracked left before the first target fully emerged. She fired on the upswing, catching the hostile the moment weapon profile cleared the barrier. Second hostile, right side, partially concealed behind the civilian. She held for 0.4 seconds, waiting for separation. The civilian moved left. Morgan fired right. Single shot. Perfect placement. Third hostile dropped from a ceiling mount, an innovation Koenig had personally requested, something not in the standard scenario. Morgan adapted before conscious thought, firing upward in a motion so smooth it looked rehearsed. The target fell. Fourth hostile was the trick. It appeared behind the civilian, weapon profile visible, but no clear shot without risking the child. Most operators would circle, looking for angle. Morgan went low, dropping to one knee, changing her sightline by 18 inches. The gap appeared. She took the shot. The final hostile folded backward, and the buzzer sounded completion. The digital clock froze. 68.4 seconds. The observation deck didn't erupt in applause. It didn't react at all. Because 40 special operations officers were trying to process what they'd just witnessed. Patterson's voice came through the intercom, and it was shaking. Scenario 7 complete. Time, 68.4 seconds. Hostile targets, 12 of 12 neutralized. Civilian targets, 0 contacts. Perfect run. He paused, then added something that wasn't in the standard protocol. New facility record. Morgan safed her weapon, removed her magazine, cleared the chamber. Her hands were steady. Her breathing was normal. She looked up at the observation deck, found Koenig's face behind the glass, and held his gaze. She didn't smile, didn't nod, just looked at him the way you'd look at someone who'd finally understood a truth they should have known all along. Then she turned and walked toward the exit. Koenig stood frozen at the observation rail, his knuckles white against the metal. Beside him, Tolliver had gone completely silent, his earlier smirk replaced by something hollow. Captain Rourke spoke quietly, but everyone nearby heard him. "General Koenig, would you like to revise your assessment of Commander Hayes's verified kill count?" Koenig didn't respond. Couldn't respond, because there was nothing to say. Morgan emerged from the kill house into morning sunlight that felt sharp after the red-lit darkness. She set her rifle case down, signed the equipment log that Patterson held out with shaking hands. "Ma'am," he started, then stopped. "I've been running this facility for 8 years. I've never seen anything like that." "It's just training, Senior Chief." "No, ma'am, respectfully, that wasn't training. That was—" he struggled for the word. "That was art." Morgan's expression didn't change. "It's what 73 looks like when they're real. When every shot matters. When missing means someone dies." Patterson nodded slowly. "Those generals, they're not going to let this go. You know that." "I know." "You just embarrassed 2 stars in front of the entire SOF community." "No, Senior Chief. I just proved they embarrassed themselves." She picked up her rifle case and headed toward the admin building. Behind her, officers were beginning to file out of the observation deck, their voices low and urgent. But Morgan wasn't listening to them anymore, because she'd done what she came to do. She'd taken their doubt and turned it into data. Their dismissal into documentation, their certainty into silence. The rest was just paperwork. Except it wasn't. Because 40 minutes later, as Morgan was completing her post-exercise debrief in a small office off the range complex, Captain Rourke burst through the door, his face flushed. "We have a problem." Morgan looked up from the form she was signing. "Sir?" "Koenig just filed a formal complaint with the base commander. He's claiming the scenario was modified to ensure your success." Morgan set down her pen very carefully. "On what evidence?" "He claims the timing sequences didn't match standard protocol, that Patterson deliberately slowed the pop-up mechanisms." "That's a lie." "I know it's a lie. You know it's a lie. Patterson knows it's a lie. But Koenig has 30 years of credibility, and you just made him look like a fool." Morgan stood. "So what happens now?" "Now?" Rourke's laugh was bitter. "Now they're convening an integrity review. Full investigation into whether you and Patterson conspired to fake your demonstration run." The words hung in the air like smoke. Morgan felt something cold settle in her chest. "They're going to erase what I just did." "They're going to try." "Even though 40 officers witnessed it. Even though the digital records show everything." "Digital records can be questioned. Witness testimony can be dismissed as inter-service bias. Koenig's already spinning it. Says you had access to the facility beforehand, that you could have programmed the sequence, that Patterson has a known preference for promoting female operators." Morgan sat back down, not because she was defeated, but because her legs suddenly felt unreliable. So it didn't matter. The demonstration, the perfect run. None of it mattered. Rourke moved to the window, his back to her. "I didn't say that." "Then what are you saying, sir?" He turned to face her, and his expression was harder than she'd ever seen it. "I'm saying Koenig just made the biggest mistake of his career. Because he didn't just attack you. He attacked Patterson. He attacked the integrity of this facility. He attacked every operator who witnessed that run and knows exactly what they saw." And that changes everything. Because now this isn't about one woman's kill count. It's about whether a 2-star general can falsify an investigation to protect his ego. Morgan absorbed this. "What do you need from me?" "Right now, nothing. Go back to your quarters. Don't talk to anyone. Don't respond to anything. Let me handle this." "Sir, with respect, Morgan." Rourke's voice softened. "Trust me. You proved your point in that kill house. Now let the system prove it can actually work." She wanted to argue, wanted to fight. But she'd been fighting for 14 years, and suddenly she was just tired. "Yes, sir." She stood, gathered her things, and walked out. But as she crossed the courtyard toward her quarters, she passed a group of junior SEALs in training. One of them, a kid who couldn't have been more than 22, stepped forward. "Ma'am, I just wanted to say, we were watching from the auxiliary feed. That was the most incredible shooting I've ever seen." Morgan stopped. "Thank you. Is it true that you have 73 confirmed kills?" She met his eyes, young, eager, uncomplicated by politics or prejudice. "Yes." "Were you scared? The first time?" The question caught her off guard. No one had ever asked her that. "Terrified." "But you took the shot anyway." "Because someone had to, and I was the one in position to do it." The kid nodded slowly, like he was filing that information away for future use. We've got your back, ma'am. Whatever happens with those generals, the teams have your back. Morgan felt something loosen in her chest. That means more than you know. She continued to her quarters, and for the first time in 48 hours, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she hadn't been fighting alone after all. But in the base commander's office, 3 floors above, General Koenig was making his case with the kind of certainty that came from never being told no. And the real battle was just beginning. The base commander's office smelled like old coffee and older decisions. Rear Admiral Vincent Carr sat behind a desk that had seen 3 decades of difficult conversations, his fingers steepled in front of his face as he listened to General Koenig build his case. The timing was too perfect, Koenig said, pacing in front of the window. 68 seconds? That's not just beating the facility record, that's demolishing it by over 25 seconds. Tolliver nodded from his seat against the wall. And she had unrestricted access to the kill house the night before. 3 hours, according to the range logs. Admiral Carr's expression didn't change. Senior Chief Patterson was present during that entire period. His report states she never entered the scenario rooms, only used Lane 12 for basic marksmanship. Patterson's report, Koenig said, turning sharply. Patterson, who has been vocal about his support for expanded female roles in special operations. Patterson, who personally authorized her scenario request without command consultation. He's the range master, Carr said quietly. Authorization is within his purview, not for modified scenarios. Who said it was modified? Koenig stopped pacing. Admiral, I've run Scenario 7 myself, twice. I know what the standard timing feels like. What we witnessed this morning was not standard protocol. Carr leaned back in his chair. You're accusing a decorated senior chief of falsifying a training scenario to benefit a female officer. That's a serious allegation, General. I'm accusing him of letting his politics interfere with his professional judgment. Based on what evidence? Based on what I saw. You saw a perfect run, Carr said. 12 of 12 targets, 0 civilian hits, under 70 seconds. That's not evidence of fraud. That's evidence of exceptional skill. Tolliver leaned forward. Or evidence of exceptional preparation. If she knew the exact timing sequences, the exact pop-up patterns. Those patterns are randomized, Carr interrupted. The system generates them algorithmically at scenario start. Patterson couldn't have given her advanced knowledge even if he wanted to. Koenig's jaw tightened. Then the algorithm was manipulated. By whom? I don't know yet, but I intend to find out. Carr stood, and despite being shorter than both generals, his presence filled the room. Let me be very clear about something. You're asking me to convene an integrity investigation that will question the credibility of one of my senior range personnel, impugn the reputation of a decorated naval officer, and suggest that our scenario systems are vulnerable to manipulation. Do you understand the implications of what you're requesting? I understand that integrity matters more than reputation, Koenig said. Good, because that standard applies to everyone in this room. The words hung there, sharp-edged and deliberate. Tolliver shifted uncomfortably. Admiral, we're not questioning Commander Hayes' service record. We're questioning one specific demonstration that defies statistical probability. Her entire record defies your statistical probability, Carr said. 73 confirmed kills, multiple commendations, a Navy Cross nomination that's still classified. The only thing that's changed is that now you've seen what those numbers actually mean. Koenig's voice went cold. Are you refusing to investigate? I'm asking if you're prepared for what an actual investigation will uncover. Meaning what? Carr pulled a file from his desk drawer and dropped it between them. Meaning that before you walked into my office making accusations, I pulled Commander Hayes' complete operational jacket. Not the sanitized version,
The actual, classified record. Koenig reached for the file. Carr's hand slapped down on top of it. "You don't have clearance for this," Carr said. "But I do. And I can tell you that 73 confirmed kills isn't an exaggeration. If anything, it's conservative."
There are another 12 engagements where she took shots, but confirmation was impossible due to operational circumstances. She didn't claim them because she couldn't verify them. Tolliver's face had gone pale. That would make her one of the most lethal snipers in American military history. Yes. The silence that followed was thick enough to cut. Koenig recovered first. Then why isn't this information public? Why isn't she a poster child for female integration in combat roles? Because she requested it stay classified, Carr said. 3 separate times she turned down opportunities for publicity. Turned down a Navy Cross ceremony because it would have required declassification. Turned down an interview with the Naval Institute because she didn't want to become a spokesperson. She just wanted to do the job. Convenient, Koenig muttered. Carr's expression hardened. "General, you've been in my office for 15 minutes, making allegations you can't support, questioning the integrity of personnel you've never worked with, and demanding an investigation into a performance you can't explain except through conspiracy. So let me ask you a direct question. Is this about Commander Hayes's competency, or is this about your discomfort with what her competency represents?" Koenig's face flushed red. "Admiral, I don't care what you appreciate. I care about facts. And the facts are that 40 officers witnessed that demonstration. The digital records corroborate every aspect of her performance. Senior Chief Patterson's logs show no irregularities. The scenario system's algorithm checks are all green. The only thing that doesn't check out is your allegation that something must have been wrong because the performance was too good." Tolliver stood slowly. "Admiral Carr, we came here in good faith." "No," Carr cut him off. "You came here looking for institutional cover to discredit a female officer who just proved you wrong. There's nothing good faith about that." The room went silent again. Koenig's voice, when it came, was tight with barely controlled anger. "Are you denying our request for an investigation?" "I'm tabling it, pending independent review. I'm sending the scenario footage, the system logs, and Senior Chief Patterson's report to Naval Special Warfare Command. They'll determine if there's grounds for investigation." "That could take weeks." "Then you'll wait weeks." Koenig and Tolliver exchanged glances. Some unspoken communication passed between them, and Koenig nodded slightly. "Fine," Koenig said. "We'll wait for NSW Command's review. But, Admiral, when they confirm our concerns, this conversation will be part of the record." "I'm counting on it," Carr said. The 2 generals left without saluting. The door closed behind them with a controlled click that somehow sounded like a slammed door anyway. Carr sat back down heavily and rubbed his eyes. He pressed his intercom button. "Get me Captain Rourke. Now." 3 minutes later, Rourke entered, his face already showing he knew this wasn't good news. "They're not backing down," Carr said, without preamble. "They're going to push this up the chain until someone gives them the investigation they want." "Can NSW Command deny it?" "They can delay it, probably will, because the optics of investigating a female SEAL instructor at the request of 2 Marine generals who publicly doubted her record are terrible. But if Koenig has enough allies at HQMC, they might pressure NSW into action anyway." Rourke sat down. "So what do we do?" "We?" Carr raised an eyebrow. "This is my problem, Captain." "No, sir. Respectfully, this is all of our problem. Because if they succeed in discrediting Morgan's demonstration, every female operator on this base just got the message that perfect isn't good enough. That no matter how well they perform, someone will find a way to question it." Carr studied him for a long moment. You're right, which is why I'm not going to let them win. He pulled out another file. I made some calls while those two were grandstanding. Talked to some people at JSOC who actually have the clearance to review Morgan's full record. And? And they're willing to provide testimony supporting her operational history. Classified testimony, but testimony nonetheless. Rourke's eyes widened. You're going to declassify her kills? Selectively. Just enough to establish credibility without compromising ongoing operations. If Koenig wants an investigation, fine. But he's going to get the investigation he deserves, not the one he wants. Sir, Morgan specifically requested to stay out of the spotlight. I know, but she doesn't get that choice anymore. Koenig made this public the moment he filed his complaint. Rourke stood and walked to the window, staring out at the base beyond. She's going to hate this. Probably. But sometimes doing the right thing means accepting consequences you didn't choose. That's not fair to her. No, Carr agreed. It's not. But neither is what those generals tried to do. And between unfair publicity and unfair dismissal, I know which one protects more female operators in the long run. Rourke turned back. What do you need from me? I need you to brief Commander Hayes. Explain what's happening. Explain why we're doing it this way. And make sure she understands that this fight stopped being about her the moment those generals made it about every woman in uniform. She already knows that, sir. That's why she ran the demonstration in the first place. Then she'll understand why we're taking the next step. Rourke nodded and headed for the door. R's voice stopped him. Captain, one more thing. There's a female Marine Raider captain named Vega. She's stationed at Pendleton. 3 years ago, General Tolliver blocked her promotion to Major. Find her. See if she's willing to talk. Rourke's expression shifted to something harder. You think there's a pattern? I think when someone makes an accusation this aggressive, you investigate everything, including the accuser. After Rourke left, Carr sat alone in his office, staring at the file in front of him. Morgan Hayes' service record. 14 years of excellence reduced to paper and redacted text. He thought about his own daughter, currently a sophomore at the Naval Academy, already talking about flight school, despite his quiet suggestions that there were other paths. He thought about what he'd tell her if she called and said a superior officer had publicly called her a liar. What he'd want someone in his position to do. The decision wasn't difficult after that. He picked up his phone and dialed a number he hadn't called in 5 years. It rang twice before a gruff voice answered. This is Vice Admiral Hendricks. Sir, it's Vince Carr. I need to talk to you about a situation at Coronado. Is this about the SEAL instructor who embarrassed 2 Marine generals this morning? Carr blinked. You already heard? Vince, the footage has been on every unofficial SOF message board for the last 3 hours. The whole community is watching this. Then you know why I'm calling. I know why you should be calling. Question is whether you actually are. Sir, I need guidance on how to handle a formal investigation request that I believe is motivated by gender bias rather than legitimate concern. Hendricks was quiet for a moment. Off the record? Yes, sir. Burn them. Burn them so badly that no general officer ever thinks about pulling this shit again. That's not exactly official guidance, sir. No, it's personal advice from someone who's been watching talented women get pushed out of the pipeline for 30 years because men were more comfortable questioning their competency than examining their own biases. Official guidance? Play it by the book. Document everything. Follow proper procedure. But Vince, the book has enough flexibility to make sure the truth actually matters. Understood, sir. And Vince, that SEAL instructor, Hayes? Yes, sir. She just became the most important test case for female integration in SOF that we've had in a decade. How you handle this determines whether the next generation of women even tries. Carr felt the weight of those words settle onto his shoulders. No pressure, sir. Welcome to flag rank. It's nothing but pressure. Handle it well. The line went dead. Carr set down the phone and pulled up the kill house footage on his computer. He watched Morgan Hayes move through those rooms with a precision that bordered on prescient. Watched her make decisions in microseconds that most operators couldn't make with minutes. Watched her thread shots through gaps that shouldn't have existed. And he understood why Koenig couldn't accept it, because accepting it meant accepting that everything Koenig believed about capability, about physical limitations, about who belonged in combat roles, was wrong. It meant accepting that a woman had achieved something he never could, despite 30 years of trying. That kind of acceptance required humility, and Koenig had run out of that a long time ago. Carr closed the video file and opened a new email. Subject line, Request for Expedited Classification Review. Recipient, Naval Special Warfare Command. Attention, Admiral Richardson. He began typing, choosing each word carefully, because this email would determine not just Morgan Hayes' future, but the future of every woman who came after her. And he'd be damned if he'd let two bitter generals stand in the way of that. Meanwhile, in her quarters, Morgan sat on her rack, staring at her phone. 17 missed calls, 34 text messages, 6 voicemails. She hadn't listened to any of them. Instead, she'd spent the last 2 hours cleaning her rifle, field stripping it down to components and reassembling it with the kind of meditative focus that came from doing something so many times it became prayer. A knock at her door broke the silence. "It's open," she called. Captain Rourke entered, his face grave. "We need to talk." Morgan set down the rifle barrel she'd been inspecting. "How bad is it?" Koenig filed a formal complaint. Admiral Carr is sending everything to NSW Command for review. "So they're investigating me?" "They're investigating the allegations. There's a difference." "Not from where I'm sitting." Rourke pulled out her desk chair and sat down heavily. "Morgan, there's more. Admiral Carr is requesting partial declassification of your operational record." Morgan's head snapped up. "No, absolutely not." "It's not your choice anymore." "The hell it isn't. That's my record. My kills. My—" She stopped, her voice cracking slightly. "Those are real people, Captain. Every one of them. I don't get to turn them into publicity." "You're not turning them into publicity. You're using them as evidence. Evidence that I'm not a liar. Evidence that I actually did what I said I did. I shouldn't need evidence for that. My word should be enough." In a perfect world, yes. But we don't live in a perfect world. We live in one where two generals can question your credibility without consequence unless we force consequences. Morgan stood and walked to the window, her back to Rourke. "I didn't sign up for this. I didn't sign up to be a test case, or a poster child, or a symbol of anything. I just wanted to serve." "I know." "Do you? Do you really? Because every day I have to prove I deserve to be here." "Every day someone looks at me and sees a diversity hire, or a political statement, or anything except a trained operator who's damn good at her job. And I've accepted that. I've accepted that I'll never just be judged on my performance alone. But this?" She turned to face him. "This is them saying even perfect isn't good enough. Even a flawless demonstration with 40 witnesses and digital records and everything documented still isn't enough proof that I'm telling the truth." Rourke let her words settle before responding. "You're right. It's not fair. None of this is fair. But fair stopped mattering the moment Koenig decided his ego was more important than your dignity. Now the only question is what happens next, and Admiral Carr believes, I believe, that the way forward is to make your record so undeniable that no one can ever question it again. By violating my privacy. By turning classified operations into public spectacle. By protecting every woman who comes after you from having to fight this same battle. Morgan closed her eyes. That's a heavy burden to carry. Yes, Rourke agreed. But you've been carrying heavy burdens for 14 years. This is just one more. She was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. If we do this, if we declassify the kills, I want something in return. What? I want an investigation into Koenig and Tolliver. I want their records reviewed. I want to know how many other women they've questioned, blocked, or pushed out. Because this isn't about me. You're right about that. But it's not about them either. It's about the system that let them get away with it for this long. Rourke smiled grimly. Admiral Carr is already ahead of you. He's got feelers out to Pendleton about a Marine Raider Captain Tolliver blocked. Good. Then I'll cooperate. But, Captain? She met his eyes. When this is over, when the investigation is done and the records are declassified and everyone knows the truth, I'm requesting a transfer. Somewhere far away from here. Somewhere I can just do the job without being a symbol. Morgan, I mean it. I'll fight this battle because it needs fighting. But I won't spend the rest of my career being a cautionary tale or an inspiration or whatever they decide to make me into. I just want to train operators and take shots when necessary and come home at the end of the day knowing I did right by the mission. Rourke stood. Fair enough. But first, we have to win. We will, Morgan said, and her voice carried the same cold certainty it had in the kill house. Because unlike those generals, we're not afraid of the truth. After Rourke left, Morgan sat back down and finally listened to her voicemails. The third one was from Sarah Chen, the SEAL candidate she'd called the night before. Morgan, it's Sarah. I just saw the footage. Holy shit. That was... I don't even have words. But I also heard what they're trying to do, what Koenig's saying. And I want you to know something. You told me you were doing this so I wouldn't have to. But if you need me to testify, if you need anyone from the teams to back you up, we're there. All of us. You trained most of us. You showed us what's possible. And we're not going to let them erase that. Call me back. Morgan saved the message and stared at her phone. The battle was coming. She could feel it building like a storm on the horizon. But for the first time since this started, she didn't feel alone. And that made all the difference. The call came at 600 the next morning. Morgan was already awake, had been for hours, running through contingencies in her mind like she was planning an operation. When her phone buzzed with Admiral Carr's direct line, she knew the waiting was over. Commander Hayes, my office, 30 minutes. Yes, sir. She dressed carefully. Regulation uniform, every crease perfect, every detail exact. Not because she thought it would matter, but because precision was the only control she had left. The walk across base felt different. Officers she'd never met nodded as she passed. A group of SEAL candidates stopped their morning run to watch her go by. One of them, a young woman maybe 23 years old, met her eyes and mouthed 2 words. Thank you. Morgan didn't acknowledge it. Couldn't. Because if she started accepting gratitude for something that wasn't finished yet, she'd lose the edge she needed to see it through. Admiral Carr's outer office was already crowded. Captain Rourke stood near the window. Senior Chief Patterson sat rigid in a chair, his face carved from stone. And seated across from them, looking like she'd rather be anywhere else, was a woman Morgan didn't recognize. Marine Corps uniform, captain's bars, and an expression that said she'd been through hell and survived, but hadn't forgotten the scars. Carr emerged from his inner office before Morgan could ask questions. "Everyone's here. Good. Inside." They filed in. Carr closed the door and turned to face them. "I'll make this brief. NSW Command completed their preliminary review overnight. The scenario footage, system logs, and Senior Chief Patterson's documentation all support Commander Hayes' demonstration as legitimate." He paused. "They found no evidence of manipulation, modification, or misconduct." Morgan felt something loosen in her chest, but Carr's expression told her this wasn't relief yet. "However," he continued, "General Koenig has escalated to Headquarters Marine Corps. He's claiming the NSW review was biased due to inter-service loyalty and is demanding a joint investigation under the Inspector General." "That could take months," Rourke said. "It could take a year. Maybe longer. And during that time, Commander Hayes' credibility remains in question. Her career is effectively frozen. And every female operator on this base operates under a cloud of doubt." Patterson's hands clenched into fists. "Sir, that's unacceptable," Carr finished, "which is why we're not waiting." He turned to the Marine captain Morgan didn't know. "Captain Vega, tell them what you told me." The woman stood slowly, like her body was still deciding whether this was safe. 3 years ago, I was recommended for promotion to Major. My fitness reports were exemplary. My operational performance was rated superior across the board. General Tolliver sat on the promotion board. She paused, swallowed hard. He delayed my promotion for 18 months. When I finally got access to the board notes through a FOIA request, his comments were clear. Concerns about physical capability for sustained operations. Replacement. Additional evaluation period to ensure standards are maintained. Standards that male officers didn't have to reprove, Carr added. Vega nodded. I wasn't the only one. I've since connected with 4 other female officers who encountered similar roadblocks when Tolliver was involved in their career progression. None of us filed complaints because... Her voice cracked slightly. Because we were told it would look like we couldn't handle criticism, that we were being too sensitive. Morgan felt rage building in her throat like bile. So he's been doing this for years. At least 5 that we can document, Carr said. Probably longer. Captain Vega has agreed to provide formal testimony. At what cost? Morgan asked quietly, looking at Vega. They'll destroy your career for this. Vega met her eyes, and Morgan saw something there she recognized. The exhaustion that came from fighting battles that shouldn't need fighting. They already tried to destroy it. I'm just making sure they don't get to do it to anyone else. Carr pulled out another file. And there's more. I received a call last night from a civilian contractor who worked with General Koenig in Afghanistan in 2019. Female intelligence analyst. She claims Koenig repeatedly dismissed her assessments and briefings, told her she was too emotional for operational planning, and eventually had her removed from his command staff. Can she prove it? Rourke asked. She kept emails, recorded conversations, documentation that would make a JAG prosecutor weep with joy. Carr's smile was grim. She never came forward because she was a contractor, thought no one would believe her over a general. But when she saw the footage of your demonstration and heard what Koenig was claiming, she reached out. Patterson spoke for the first time, his voice rough. So, what's the play, sir? We have evidence of a pattern. We have witnesses. How do we use it? Carr sat on the edge of his desk. We give Koenig exactly what he asked for, a full investigation, except we expand the scope. We investigate not just Commander Hayes' demonstration, but the conduct of all parties involved in questioning it, including a comprehensive review of General Koenig and General Tolliver's history with female personnel. They'll fight that, Rourke said. Let them, because the more they fight, the more it looks like they have something to hide. And the Inspector General doesn't like generals who look like they have something to hide. Morgan had been quiet, processing this. Now she spoke. Admiral, what about my operational record? The declassification request? Carr's expression softened slightly. NSW Command is willing to provide limited declassification, not your entire jacket, just enough to establish credibility. Specifically, they're prepared to confirm the number of confirmed kills, the theaters of operation, and the commendations attached to those operations. The tactical details remain classified. How limited are we talking? A 2-page summary. Redacted for operational security, but sufficient to prove that 73 isn't fiction. It's actually conservative. Morgan closed her eyes. 2 pages. 14 years reduced to 2 pages. 73 people who'd died by her hand, summarized in clinical language that would strip away the context, the necessity, the weight of every trigger pull. Commander Hayes? Carr's voice was gentle. I know this isn't what you wanted, but it's what's necessary, she finished, opening her eyes. I know, sir. I'll cooperate. On one condition. Name it. When this is done, when the investigation concludes and the truth is documented, and those generals face whatever consequences they've earned, I want a transfer. Instructor position somewhere quiet. Somewhere I can train operators without being a symbol or a cautionary tale or whatever else people decide I represent. Carr studied her face for a long moment. You've earned that. When this is over, you pick your orders. I'll make it happen. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me yet, because before we get to over, we have to go through hell. And Koenig has spent 30 years learning how to make hell last. He wasn't wrong. The Inspector General's investigation formally launched 72 hours later. A team of 4 investigators, 2 Navy, 2 Marine Corps, descended on Coronado with the kind of methodical intensity that made everyone nervous, guilty or not. They interviewed Morgan for 6 hours the first day. The lead investigator, a Navy captain named Walsh, was professionally neutral, but Morgan could feel the skepticism radiating off the Marine Corps lieutenant colonel sitting beside him. Walk me through the demonstration again, Walsh said for the 3rd time. Start from the moment you entered room 4. Morgan repeated the sequence. Double tap left, single shot, partially obscured, transition right, thread 3 shots through moving civilians. Her voice stayed level, factual, empty of emotion. And you're certain you didn't hit any civilians? The Marine Lieutenant Colonel asked. The sensors confirmed 0 civilian contacts. Sensors can malfunction. The backup systems confirmed the same results, as did the visual observation from 40 witnesses. Witnesses who had a vested interest in seeing you succeed. Morgan's jaw tightened. Witnesses who understand what they saw because they're trained operators themselves. Walsh held up a hand. Let's move on. Commander, in your statement you mentioned that General Koenig questioned your kill count before you requested the demonstration. Can you describe that interaction? She could, in excruciating detail. Every word, every implication, every moment where she'd felt her credibility being shredded in front of her peers. The interviews continued. Patterson was questioned for 4 hours, Captain Rourke for 3. Every officer who'd witnessed the demonstration was brought in and asked to describe what they'd seen, how they'd interpreted it, whether they noticed any irregularities. But the investigators didn't just interview witnesses to the demonstration. They also started pulling records, personnel files, promotion boards, fitness reports. Every interaction Koenig and Tolliver had with female officers over the last decade. And patterns started emerging. On day 5, Walsh called Morgan back in. This time he was alone, and his expression had shifted from skeptical to something harder. Commander, I need to show you something. He pulled out a file. This is a compilation of 17 female officers who had career interactions with either General Koenig or General Tolliver over the past 8 years. 12 of them reported delays in promotion. 8 reported negative fitness reports that contradicted their operational performance. 5 left active duty earlier than planned. Morgan stared at the file. 17. That we've found so far. The number's likely higher. Many women don't report because they assume nothing will come of it. They're probably right. Walsh's expression tightened. Commander, I want to be clear about something. When I started this investigation, I assumed we'd find evidence that your demonstration had been modified in some way. Not because I thought you were lying, but because the performance was statistically improbable. He paused. I was wrong. The evidence is overwhelming that you did exactly what you claimed. What I didn't expect to find was evidence of systematic bias from the officers who questioned you. What happens now? Now? Now this stops being about you and becomes about them. But Koenig wasn't done fighting. On day 7, a letter appeared in the Marine Corps Times, signed by Koenig and co-signed by Tolliver. It was carefully worded, avoiding direct accusations while implying everything. Recent events have highlighted the need for rigorous standards in special operations training, it read. While we support the integration of qualified personnel regardless of gender, we must ensure that political pressure does not compromise the integrity of our evaluation systems. Excellence cannot be assumed. It must be proven consistently, transparently, and without accommodation. Morgan read it on her phone while sitting in the SEAL team room. Around her, a dozen operators had gone silent. That's not about you, one of them finally said. That's about all of us. He's saying the whole SOF community is compromised. He's saying political correctness is making us weaker, another added. Like the standards dropped to let you pass. Morgan set down her phone very carefully. The standards didn't drop. I exceeded them. We know that. Question is whether everyone else will. The answer came faster than anyone expected. Within 18 hours, a response letter appeared in the same publication, signed by 15 female Special Operations personnel. SEALs, Raiders, Special Forces, combat controllers. Some retired, some still active, all with combat experience. Excellence is not gender-specific, the letter stated. It is demonstrated through performance, not presumed through bias. The recent questioning of a decorated naval officer's verified combat record speaks not to political pressure, but to institutional resistance to accepting that women can and do meet the same standards as men. We call on senior leadership to address this resistance with the same vigor they claim to apply to maintaining standards. The letter was polite, professional, and devastating because it shifted the narrative from one woman's credibility to the military's willingness to acknowledge female competence. And it terrified Koenig. Morgan could tell because he made his first mistake. He called her directly. Commander Hayes, this is Major General Koenig. I think we need to talk. Morgan put the call on speaker and gestured for Captain Rourke, who'd just walked into her office, to stay. Sir, anything you need to say to me should go through the IG investigation. This isn't about the investigation. This is about damage control. For both of us. I'm not the one causing damage, General. You know what I mean. This has gotten out of hand. The press is involved now. Congressional staffers are asking questions. Neither of us needs this kind of attention. You're right. I didn't need any of this. I just needed you to check my record before calling me a liar. Koenig's voice hardened. I never called you a liar. You said my kill count was statistically impossible fiction. What would you call that? I called it skepticism, which any reasonable person would have verified before accusing, sir. Silence on the line. Then, quieter.
What do you want, Commander? What would it take for this to go away?
Morgan felt something cold settle in her chest. Are you asking me to drop my cooperation with the investigation?
I'm asking what it would take for both of us to move past this. You want a transfer? I can make that happen. Choice of duty station, favorable fitness report. We both walk away clean.
Rourke's eyes went wide.
He mouthed one word.
Recording? Morgan shook her head slightly. California was a two-party consent state. But she didn't need a recording. She just needed witnesses. General Koenig, let me make sure I understand. You're offering me favorable treatment in exchange for dropping my participation in an active Inspector General investigation? I'm offering you a reasonable resolution to an unfortunate situation. That sounds a lot like offering me a bribe to obstruct an investigation, sir. Don't put words in my mouth, Commander. I'm just clarifying your offer, General. So let me give you my answer. No. I won't drop my cooperation. I won't accept a transfer bought with silence. And I won't help you sweep your pattern of gender bias under the rug just because it's gotten politically inconvenient. You're making a mistake. The only mistake I made was assuming you'd act with integrity when presented with evidence that contradicted your biases. I won't make that mistake again. She hung up. Rourke stared at her. Did he just attempt to interfere with an IG investigation? Yes. Morgan, you have to report this immediately. Already composing the email, she pulled out her laptop and started typing. Subject line. Attempted interference. IG investigation. Recipient. Captain Walsh, Inspector General's office. She detailed the call, Koenig's offer, her refusal. She didn't editorialize, didn't interpret, just documented exactly what was said. When she hit send, Rourke let out a breath he'd been holding. That's it. He's done. Maybe. Or maybe he has enough friends in high places to survive this, too. Not this. Not attempted obstruction. Morgan wanted to believe him, but she'd seen too many senior officers escape consequences through connections and carefully worded apologies. The response from Walsh came 30 minutes later. Received. Thank you for immediate reporting. Request you preserve all phone records. This information will be included in final investigation report. That night, Morgan couldn't sleep. She lay in her rack, staring at the ceiling, thinking about 17 female officers whose careers had been derailed. Thinking about how many more there might be who never came forward. Thinking about the young SEAL candidate who'd mouthed, "Thank you," and wondering if any of this would actually change anything. Her phone buzzed. A text from Captain Vega. Just heard what Koenig tried. You did the right thing. Morgan typed back. Doesn't feel right. Feels exhausting. That's because it is. But exhausting isn't the same as wrong. Morgan stared at those words for a long time. Another text came through, this one from Sarah Chen. 23 of us are ready to testify if needed. Women you trained, women who know what you're capable of. Just say the word. Morgan felt something crack open in her chest. Not quite hope, not quite relief, just the recognition that maybe she wasn't fighting this alone after all. She typed back to both of them. Thank you. For everything. Then she set down her phone, closed her eyes, and for the first time in 10 days, allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, the truth would actually matter. The investigation's final report was due in 72 hours, and General Koenig had just run out of moves. The final report arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered not by email but by hand. Captain Walsh himself carried it into Admiral Carr's office, his face showing the kind of controlled tension that came from knowing what you were about to say would end careers. Morgan sat across from Carr's desk, Captain Rourke standing behind her, Senior Chief Patterson to her left. Walsh laid the file down with a deliberateness that made it feel like evidence at a trial. Admiral, the investigation is complete. Findings are conclusive. Carr opened the file but didn't read it yet. Summary first, Captain. Walsh stood at attention, though no one had asked him to. Commander Hayes's demonstration was conducted entirely within established protocols. No evidence of manipulation, accommodation, or modification was found. Her performance of 68.4 seconds with perfect accuracy represents legitimate, exceptional skill, consistent with her documented operational history. Morgan felt something loosen in her chest, but Walsh wasn't finished. However, our investigation revealed substantial evidence of gender-based bias from Major General Bradley Koenig and Brigadier General Marcus Tolliver. We documented 17 cases of female officers experiencing career delays, negative evaluations inconsistent with performance, or early separation following interactions with one or both generals. Additionally, General Koenig's attempted contact with Commander Hayes during an active investigation constitutes interference with an IG inquiry. Carr looked up sharply. Recommendations? General Koenig, formal reprimand, removal from all personnel evaluation roles, recommendation for immediate retirement. General Tolliver, formal reprimand, mandatory bias training, removal from promotion boards for a period of 2 years. Both officers are flagged for further review by Headquarters Marine Corps. The room went silent. Patterson's voice came out rough. That's it? After what they did? Walsh turned to him. Senior Chief, in a perfect world, their careers would be over today. In the real world, these recommendations represent the maximum consequence we can enforce without triggering a political firestorm that would ultimately hurt the very people we're trying to protect. He's right, Carr said quietly. We push for court-martial. HQMC pushes back. This becomes a partisan battle, and the story becomes about politics instead of conduct. This way, the record speaks for itself. Morgan spoke for the first time. What about the other women, the 17 you documented? Walsh met her eyes. Every one of them will receive a formal review of their career progression. Cases where bias clearly impacted advancement will be remediated. It's not perfect justice, but it's institutional correction. And the next woman? Morgan pressed. The one who comes after me? What stops this from happening to her? This does. Walsh tapped the report. This investigation becomes case law. Every commander, every senior officer now knows that gender-based credibility challenges will be investigated, documented, and punished. You didn't just prove your own competency, Commander. You made it harder for anyone to question the next woman's without evidence. Morgan wanted to feel victorious, wanted to feel vindicated, but all she felt was tired. When will they be notified? She asked. They already have been, Carr said. Both generals received preliminary findings 2 hours ago. Official notification goes out this afternoon. As if on cue, Carr's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his expression hardening. Speaking of which, General Koenig is requesting an immediate meeting. Claims he has new evidence that warrants reconsideration. Rourke made a disgusted sound. He's stalling. Let him stall, Carr said. The findings are final, but I'll give him 15 minutes to make whatever case he thinks he has. Commander Hayes, you're welcome to attend. Morgan shook her head. No, sir. I've said everything I need to say. He can talk to the record. Carr studied her face, then nodded. Dismissed. All of you. Captain Walsh, you'll stay. As they left, Morgan heard Walsh begin, Admiral, there's one more thing you should know about the civilian contractor who came forward. Outside, Patterson turned to Morgan. You should have gone in there. Should have looked him in the eye when he tries to worm out of this. Why? Morgan said. So he can see satisfaction on my face? So I can feel like I won something? She shook her head. This was never about beating him. It was about making sure he couldn't do it to someone else. You did that. We did that. You put your career on the line too, Senior Chief. Patterson's jaw worked. Ma'am, I've spent 23 years in this Navy. I've trained thousands of operators. And what I saw in that kill house was the finest display of combat shooting I've ever witnessed. If I wasn't willing to stake my career on that truth, then my career wasn't worth having. Morgan extended her hand. Patterson shook it, his grip firm. Thank you, she said simply. No, ma'am. Thank you for reminding me why I do this job. He walked away, leaving Morgan and Rourke standing in the corridor. You okay? Rourke asked. Ask me in a month, when the adrenaline wears off and I can actually process what just happened. Fair enough. What now? Now I go back to doing my job. Training operators, running ranges, being invisible again. Rourke smiled slightly. I don't think invisible is in your future anymore, Morgan. Maybe not, but I can try. She started to walk away, then stopped. Captain, thank you for believing me before you had proof, for fighting when you could have stayed quiet. I didn't do it for you, Rourke said. I did it for my daughter. She's 14, wants to be a Marine. And I'll be damned if she grows up in a military where generals can question her competency just because she doesn't fit their expectations. Morgan felt her throat tighten. She's lucky to have you. No, she'll be lucky to have role models like you. This time, when Morgan walked away, she didn't stop. The official announcement came 3 days later, a terse press release from Headquarters Marine Corps. Following an Inspector General investigation, Major General Bradley Koenig has elected to retire, effective immediately. Brigadier General Marcus Tolliver has been reassigned to administrative duties, pending review. The language was careful, neutral, bureaucratic, but anyone who knew how to read military announcements understood what it meant. Careers over. Reputations destroyed. Legacy tarnished. The unofficial response was louder. Message boards exploded. Social media split into predictable camps. Some called it political correctness run amok. Others called it long overdue accountability. Morgan ignored all of it. She was back on the range, running a basic marksmanship course for SEAL candidates when Captain Vega found her. Commander Hayes, can we talk? Morgan called a 10-minute break and walked with Vega away from the firing line. I wanted you to know, Vega said. The Marine Corps reopened my promotion board. I'm being advanced to Major, effective next month, with back pay for the 18 months they delayed me. That's good. You earned it. I earned it 3 years ago. I'm only getting it now because you were willing to fight when I wasn't. Morgan turned to face her. You were willing. You testified. You put your career on the line just like I did. Only after you showed it was possible to win. We haven't won yet, Morgan said quietly. We just made it slightly harder for them to keep doing what they were doing. The fight doesn't end here. I know, but it's a start. Vega hesitated. I'm putting together a working group, female officers across SOF components, sharing information, supporting each other, documenting issues before they become crises. Would you be willing to participate? Morgan wanted to say no, wanted to fade back into operational work and leave the politics to someone else. But she thought about that young SEAL candidate, about Sarah Chen,
about the next woman who would face what she'd faced. "Yes," she said, "but I'm not a spokesperson. I'll contribute, I'll support, but I'm not the face of anything." Fair enough.
Just having your name attached will matter. After Vega left, Morgan returned to the firing line. The candidates were ready, eager, focused. One of them was a woman, the only female in the class. She held her rifle with the kind of natural competency that came from proper training and natural aptitude. "What's your name?" Morgan asked. "Petty Officer Reeves, ma'am." "How long you been shooting?" "6 years, ma'am. Qualified expert on my first range qual." "Good. Show me." Reeves took her position, settled her breathing, and fired 5 rounds downrange. All 5 hit center mass. Morgan checked the target, then turned back. "You're pulling slightly left on your trigger press. Compensate by adjusting your grip pressure. Try again." Reeves made the adjustment and fired 5 more. Perfect group. Dead center. "Better," Morgan said. "Keep that consistency and you'll do fine here." "Thank you, ma'am." Reeves paused. "Ma'am, I just wanted to say, what you did, standing up to those generals, it matters. To all of us." Morgan met her eyes. "What matters is that you're here, that you're qualified, that you're going to be an operator who's so damn good that no one can question whether you belong. That's what matters." "Yes, ma'am." As the class continued, Morgan felt something shift. Not relief, not victory, just a quiet recognition that the weight she'd been carrying had distributed itself across more shoulders. She wasn't fighting alone anymore. None of them were. 2 weeks later, Admiral Carr called her back to his office. This time it was just the 2 of them. "Your transfer request," he said, sliding a folder across the desk. "I have 3 options for you, all instructor positions, all away from the spotlight." Morgan opened the folder. Dam Neck, Virginia, Little Creek, Virginia, and Naval Special Warfare Center, Coronado. She looked up. "Coronado isn't away from anything, sir." "No, but it's where you can do the most good. Train the next generation. Make sure they're better than the last one." Carr leaned back. "I know you want to fade away, want to be just another operator doing the job. But Morgan, you're not just another operator anymore, and pretending you are doesn't serve anyone." "With respect, sir, I never asked to be anything more." "No, but sometimes what we're asked to do and what we need to do aren't the same thing." He gestured to the folder. "Take a few days. Think about it. But understand that wherever you go, your reputation goes with you. The only question is whether you use it or run from it." Morgan closed the folder. "I'll think about it." That night, she sat in her quarters and called her father. A retired Navy captain who'd spent 30 years flying F-18s and never once questioned whether his daughter belonged in combat. "How you holding up?" he asked. "Honestly, I don't know. I did what I had to do, but I'm not sure what comes next." "What do you want to come next?" "I want to train operators. I want to be good at my job. I want to not have to think about gender or politics or being a symbol every time I walk into a room." Her father was quiet for a moment. "You remember when you were 8 and you told me you wanted to be a SEAL?" "I remember you didn't laugh." "I didn't laugh because I knew you meant it. And I knew that if you were going to do it, you'd face resistance every step of the way. Not because you weren't capable, but because people fear change more than they value competency." He paused. "You've proven the competency. Now the question is whether you're willing to help change the system that made you prove it in the first place." "That's not what I signed up for." "No, but it's what you're positioned to do. And sometimes the best operators are the ones who complete missions they didn't choose. After they hung up, Morgan sat with those words for a long time. The next morning, she walked back into Admiral Carr's office and put the folder on his desk.
"Coronado," she said. "I'll stay."
Carr didn't smile, but his expression shifted to something like approval. "You're sure?"
"No, but I'm certain that running from this won't make it go away. And I'm certain that the women coming up behind me deserve instructors who understand what they're going to face."
Good. You start your new position in 2 weeks, Senior Instructor for Advanced Marksmanship and Tactical Employment. You'll have a staff of 4 and full autonomy over curriculum development.
"I want one condition."
Name it.
"I want the authority to fail any student who doesn't meet standard, regardless of gender. No quotas, no political pressure, no accommodation. Everyone meets the same bar or they don't pass."
Carr nodded. Agreed. But understand that standard cuts both ways. You can't make it easier for men or harder for women.
"I wouldn't. That's the point."
3 months later, Morgan stood in front of her first class as senior instructor. 24 students, 4 of them women, all of them watching her with the kind of intensity that came from knowing her reputation.
"My name is Lieutenant Commander Hayes," she began. "For the next 12 weeks, I'm going to teach you how to shoot. Not accurately, not competently. How to shoot perfectly, every time, under any condition. Because perfect is the only standard that matters when someone's life depends on your trigger pull."
She paused, meeting eyes around the room.
"Some of you already know my story. Some of you have opinions about what happened with those generals. I'm going to tell you right now, none of that matters here. What matters is whether you can perform when it counts. I don't care about your gender, your background, your politics, or what anyone told you before you got here.
I care about whether you can put rounds on target when everything is falling apart and people are depending on you." One of the male students raised his hand. "Ma'am, is it true you have 73 confirmed kills?" Morgan held his gaze. "It's true. And if you're asking because you're curious, that's fine. If you're asking because you doubt it, you're in the wrong class. Because I'm not here to prove anything to you. I'm here to teach you how to be operators who never have to prove anything to anyone, because your performance speaks for itself." The student nodded slowly. "Understood, ma'am." "Good. Now let's get to work." Over the next 12 weeks, Morgan taught them everything she knew. Not just marksmanship mechanics, but decision-making under pressure, threat assessment, the psychological cost of taking a life, and the professional requirement to do it anyway when necessary. She failed 3 students who couldn't meet standard, 2 men, 1 woman. She didn't enjoy it, but she didn't hesitate either, because the standard was the standard, and lowering it for any reason would dishonor everyone who'd met it. By the end of the course, 19 students graduated. All 4 women passed, and when the final scores were posted, the top shooter was Petty Officer Reeves, who'd learned to compensate for her trigger pull and developed into one of the finest marksmen in the class. On graduation day, Admiral Carr attended. So did Captain Rourke, Senior Chief Patterson, Captain Vega, and, sitting in the back row, Sarah Chen, who'd taken leave from Team 3 just to watch. Morgan kept her speech short. "You came here as candidates. You're leaving as operators. The only thing that's changed is what you're capable of. Remember that when someone questions whether you belong. Remember that when the job gets hard. Remember that when you're the only woman in the room, or the only man who believes she should be there. Competency doesn't ask for permission, it just performs." After the ceremony, Sarah Chen found her.
"That was good. Not too sentimental.
I don't do sentimental. I know. It's one of the things I learned from you. Sarah paused. I got my orders. Deploying in 6 weeks. Where? Can't say, but I wanted to thank you before I left. For showing me what's possible. For fighting when you could have just accepted what they said about you. Morgan shook her head. I didn't do it for you. I did it because it was right. I know. That's why it mattered. As the crowd dispersed, Morgan stood alone on the range where she'd proven herself 3 months ago. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the kill house facility. She thought about General Koenig, now retired and bitter. About Tolliver, relegated to administrative obscurity. About the 17 women whose careers had been salvaged, and the dozens more who would never face what they'd faced. She thought about 73 confirmed kills, each one a decision made in microseconds that she'd carry for a lifetime. She thought about 68.4 seconds that had changed everything and nothing. And she thought about Petty Officer Reeves, about Sarah Chen, about every woman who would come after them, who would be judged on their performance instead of their gender, because someone had been willing to fight for that right. Morgan picked up her rifle case and headed back toward her office. There would be another class next month, another group of candidates to train, to test, to prepare for a job that didn't care about anything except whether you could perform when it mattered. She'd proven she could. Now she'd spend the rest of her career making sure they could too. Because that was the real mission. Not proving herself to men who'd already decided what she was capable of, but ensuring the next generation never had to prove what should have been assumed all along, that competency has no gender, excellence recognizes no limits, and the only standard that matters is whether you can do the job when lives depend on it. Morgan Hayes had spent 14 years meeting that standard. The demonstration in the kill house hadn't changed that. It had just made it impossible for anyone to deny. And in the end, that was all that mattered. Not revenge, not vindication, not even justice. Just the quiet, relentless truth that some numbers don't lie. They just wait for the right moment to speak. 73 confirmed kills. 68.4 seconds of perfection. One woman who refused to accept that doubt was more credible than documentation. The generals had questioned her record. She'd responded with precision that ended careers and opened doors. And somewhere, right now, a young woman was deciding whether she had what it took to be a SEAL, never knowing that the path had just gotten a little bit easier because someone else had refused to let it stay impossible. That was the real victory. Not the investigation, not the punishment, not even the vindication. Just the simple, powerful truth that excellence, when demonstrated without compromise, creates space for everyone who comes after. Morgan Hayes had created that space. Now she'd spend the rest of her career making sure no one could close it again.